thinking about the style you're going for. The kitchen is part of the home. So it needs to be cohesive. It needs to look like it's part of the home. And having, whether you've got a master plan, you're doing a whole heap of renovations, or you're just doing the kitchen, it all needs to look like it works together.
You're listening to the She Renovates podcast. You're listening to She Renovates, the podcast for women who want to renovate to create an income and a life they love.
Welcome back to another episode of She Renovates. So today we're diving into the most valuable room in any renovation, the kitchen. I've asked Melissa Betts to come in and to share her wisdom on this topic. Melissa is currently in our fast track program. She's also an interior designer and has just completed an accreditation on kitchens and bathroom design. Melissa, welcome. Can you tell us, about your background for a start, and also what this accreditation involves and what it means for your service?
Yeah, sure. So yes, I am a qualified interior designer. I have a diploma in interior design and decoration, and my own business, Positive Space Design. I've been around now for almost 8 years. So as you're saying, I recently got my accreditation for kitchen design. Haven't got bathroom design yet. That's planned for in the plans for this year. But it was a rigorous process. So it was through the KBDI, Kitchen and Bathroom Designers Institute, which is one of our industry bodies. So I had to submit 2 comprehensive portfolio projects, and then another 5 additional sets of plans and an exam, and it was all assessed by a panel of industry experts. So yeah, there was no ticker box about it. It was a lot of work to get it sorted. So yeah, it really.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a big achievement. Like doing anything over and above your day-to-day work's a challenge. So well done, and yeah, doing so well at it.
Mm.
So firstly, I want to talk about, and I'm sure that you will guide this conversation, with your flavour in mind. So what are the top 3 things that you think about when you're designing a kitchen?
Yeah, so I think the most obvious one to start off with is who you're actually designing for. So the way you would design a kitchen for a large home, in the metropolitan suburban kind of areas with a bunch of kids is entirely different for the way you design a granny flat, or a one bedder for a young professional who never cooks and only ever eats out. Obviously, if you know the client, it's a lot easier to design specifically for them and their preferences, their lifestyle. But often we need to, especially as renovators, we need to design something that's a bit more generic. So when we're designing something to sell, we need to essentially imagine who the most likely occupants are from there. So if you're designing in a 3-bedroom house, assuming that there's going to be at least one kid and operating from there. The second one, which maybe should be the first one, sometimes it's a kind of go roundabout, having a realistic budget. It's a huge thing to consider. So you really need to do your research. You really need to consider what is required for that home. Clearly, a big kitchen is going to cost more than a smaller one, but putting a small kitchen in a larger home, it doesn't work. It's not functional for the home, and it ends up being a waste of money because it's going to need to be replaced anyway. Also, hearing that those round numbers, like, a kitchen costs $40,000 or whatever, it doesn't mean anything unless they're talking about your kitchen. There's no round number for a kitchen. And I think also thinking about the style you're going for. The kitchen is part of the home, so it needs to be cohesive. It needs to look like it's part of the home. And having, whether you've got a master plan, you're doing a whole heap of renovations, or you're just doing the kitchen, it all needs to look like it works together. And it needs to look cohesive. Otherwise, when someone comes in, it's going to look like it just doesn't quite work. There's a bit of a disconnect.
Oh, look, I completely agree. And I feel that the kitchen really sets the tone for the home. Because
Absolutely.
usually it's sort of the what do you call it, the centerpiece.
Yeah.
And so if that's not consistent with, how you do your bathrooms and, your colors and finishes, then it's a really big missed opportunity.
Mm, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I think also, like I know that most of your designing is for uh, forever homes,
Mm,
and so it's a bit of a shift to be thinking about renovating for profit. And I think it's also important to remember that those of us who renovate for profit also do have family homes. So, like I'm in the process of doing a kitchen in my family home at the moment. And so, and the rules are slightly different. Like you would spend on your family home more than you would in a project, because in a project it's about ROI, but on your home, that ROI has different considerations. Would you agree?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. There are some things that might be deal breakers for you. You might have your air fryer that lives on the bench constantly, so you need some way of keeping it there without looking terrible. Um, but we're not designing for the imaginary person,
No.
with their imaginary air fryer
Mm.
for the renovator. Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
for the renovating for profit.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what do you reckon the most common mistakes people make when they're planning for their kitchen?
Oh, there are so many horror stories out there. And I think the main one is layout. I think people have set in their mind that they desperately want an island or a butler's pantry or something like that. Um, but if you don't have the right layout for the shape of your home, then it's just not going to work. So there is no point having an island if it's going to be the size of a postage stamp. You've got a useless island, you've lost bench space, and you've lost cupboard space. So you really need to consider the right layout for the space that you've got. And things like butler's pantries might be lovely, but is there a better ROI for a different kind of space? Can you turn that into a better laundry or maybe even another bedroom if it's big enough? So going from a 3 bedroom to a 4 bedroom house, that definitely beats having a butler's pantry.
Yeah. Yes, the butler's pantry has celebrity value, but yeah, often isn't the smartest thing to do with the space. And
Yeah.
I always think with renovating for profit, you can pretty much call anything a butler's pantry. Like
Yeah.
seriously, it doesn't have to be a whole room.
No.
So yeah, yeah. And that's interesting about like someone might be hell bent on having an island. One of the like we're getting this new kitchen at the moment, and David, most people listening to this podcast would know who he is, designed it. I was hell bent on having bookend, pantry one end um and fridge unit the other end, so and then no overheads in the middle.
Mhm.
But then he came along and said, and we definitely have form over function in our house. He said no pantry, we have to have no overheads, it's all got to be flat. So all of my kitchen is drawers. I do not have a pantry, so that'll be interesting to see how it goes.
Yeah. Oh, that'll be very interesting. The other
Mm,
thing I think people often don't consider is whether it's worth doing a little bit more in the renovation side of things, like moving a window or opening up a
yeah.
wall. So I think often we kind of look at it as it's just going to be cheaper to replace like for like, but that could be a deal breaker for somebody. So, like families with young children, if you've got a completely closed off kitchen and they can't see the kids when they're making dinner, it's who knows what they're up to. So often, like it might be a beautifully renovated kitchen, but if you can't see the kids, well, they're not going to buy it or rent it.
I completely agree with that. And you know, uh, like apparently eating kitchens are coming back. What do you think about that?
I think, uh, is it eating kitchens or is it sitting at the bench and inhaling something quickly on the way out the door? I don't know.
Okay, so what other mistakes do people make when they're designing their kitchen?
I think a lot of it is really considering how they use it. Not realizing that, for example, having you talking about having all drawers, and then realizing that your Weet-Bix box doesn't fit in the drawer. So you've then got to buy another container to decant your Weet-Bix into the container so that it fits in the drawer. So it's all the little bits and pieces. Even yesterday, I was talking to a joiner about a bar cabinet that we're designing, and having to measure bottles of spirits to see, what size shelves they should be. So it's all those little things that make the difference, because you don't want to have all of the big things in one corner on the bench just because they don't fit in your
Exactly.
cabinetry.
Yeah. And you sort of moved into my next question about balancing out functionality and aesthetics.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because there is no point having a beautifully functional kitchen that's ugly, because
Yeah.
it just makes you sad.
Yeah.
And there's also no point having a poorly designed kitchen that looks fabulous, because it's poorly designed. You can't use it.
Yeah.
So either of those will end up being either replaced relatively quickly because you just can't deal with it,
Yeah.
or if it's a rental property, then people will just move out because it's something that just
Yeah.
makes them unhappy to deal with.
Yeah, I totally agree. And if you have not, you know, now I'm going to be really sexist now and
Yeah.
say, I notice not the men in my life, but a lot of men don't have a lot of regard for how it works. But I think women tend to be quite practical and don't want, tend to think through those technicalities a bit more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think again, going down the stereotyping line,
yeah,
women are generally more likely to be cooking and more likely to be at home with the young children. So they're also then more likely to have, a 2-year-old hanging off your legs while you're trying to cook dinner,
yeah,
and trying to work out how you can navigate a kitchen with a couple of kids hanging off you. It needs to be a functional space primarily. Um,
yeah,
but
yeah,
aesthetics are important, but they're not the um,
yeah.
primary thing
That's
to think about.
interesting about cooking with kids hanging off you. Do you have minimum distances for, say, between an island bench and and another unit, like that walkway? Do you have a minimum distance for that? Would you be likely to make that wider if you knew that your client had young children?
I think a lot of it depends again on how much space you have in the home. I personally wouldn't do less than a meter between.
Yeah, yeah,
But a meter feels tight to me. I'd prefer more like 1.2.
yeah.
But again, it depends whether it's an island or whether it's if it's a galley style kitchen with a, a long bench on either side, then you really want more space, because it's
Mm.
going to be a thoroughfare. People are going to be walking in and out and along a lot more than, an island that you can reach things from the other side, or duck around the other side of the island if
Yeah,
someone's cooking at the stove.
yeah. So we're just going to have a quick chat about designing for resale or profit.
Hmm.
What kitchen features do you think gives the best bang for your buck?
I think, despite what I said before, everyone loves an island, but it has to fit in the space again. If it doesn't fit, it will be, it'll look dicky, and that will actually be a drawback. A good sized pantry. So I don't hope I'm not speaking out of turn here, but given your
It's okay. I've already spoken out of turn on it. Don't worry. So, yeah,
um, So yeah, I think a lot of, especially families with children, knowing that they've got, a million different packaged things for morning teas, and everyone's got their own different type of cereal and own different type of bread and biscuits, and everyone has their own preferences for everything. So having a pantry that fits all of the bits and pieces in I think, can be quite important.
yeah,
Also, whether it's a pantry itself or whether it's just enough storage, if you don't have enough storage in the kitchen, having to, leave the room to find the flour, that's a real no-no. So, and, there's nothing worse than when you're looking at a house that you're interested in buying, opening a linen closet and finding pantry goods in there and thinking, oh, that means that the kitchen is too small.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yeah.
It's interesting. So I should qualify by saying I do have a big cupboard in my kitchen
Yeah.
that I could call a pantry, but it's not in the triangle.
Yeah. Yep.
By the way, is the triangle still a thing?
It is, but it's kind of morphed. So the triangle is definitely still a thing, but we talk a lot more about zones now,
Yeah.
and I think it's more having like a prep zone and a cooking zone, those sorts of things. But yeah, definitely triangles are still important. If you've got to get your steps up to cook dinner, that's just not worth
Yeah.
doing. And I think also having so many more butlers' kitchens now, that makes a difference in how triangles and zones work.
Exactly.
Especially if you've got, say, the fridge in the butler's pantry. Yeah, it works very differently.
Yeah. And how does that work? Like, how popular is that? Like, in terms of, like, I'm thinking, like, we're talking about opening the kitchen up so a mum can watch her kids while she cooks. She's not going to be watching her kids when she's stuck in the butler's pantry preparing the food. How does
Yeah,
that
that's right.
work?
I think every family seems to have a different way of working. Some people use the butler's pantry for prep. Some use it to hide everything away. Some
Yeah.
just use it for storage, and you pull out things that you need and then take them all back. So every family operates in a different way. Some will have all of their appliances lined up on the bench in the butler's pantry. So you've got the Thermomix and the air fryer and the sandwich press and the kettle, and everything is all lined up.
Yeah.
So nothing ever needs to get pulled out. Um, yeah, so I think it very much depends.
Yeah. Okay. And so the next question's really going to test your resolve. How can renovators create a designer kitchen look without blowing the budget? What would you say are the top three things that they should consider?
Okay, so I think it's all about the detail. As long as your color palette works well, adding detail with the small touches is what makes it look luxe. So things like fabulous kitchen pendants, and a pretty splashback tile, and a bit of bling in new handles can distract from a multitude of more budget-friendly options. So it
Yeah.
ends up being the the that house with the pendant rather than that house with the laminate bench top.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That
so
is actually a good point. And you know what? I've seen that in action because when we did Darley Street, we used a custom cabinet maker who did it. It cost a bomb, but it was an absolutely stunning kitchen, all handmade. You know the little. This is my measure of the quality of the kitchen. The adjustment holes in the
yep.
cabinet, they were brass lined,
Oh wow,
and it was it was very beautiful. And
that
so,
sounds stunning.
pardon?
It sounds stunning.
It was stunning, and I'm happy to say that that same joiner is doing our kitchen. And yes, anyhow, so
I'd have to grab his name from you.
yeah, I'll be happy to share. And the when we went to Potts Point, so we broke the budget on Darley Street because David is an architect and he was one of the partners in the deal, and he wanted it for his portfolio, so
Mm,
that's fine. But when we went to Potts Point, we didn't have the same budget, so I had about 20 grand for a kitchen, including stone. And we found a custom joiner who did a great job. Like, we had those arch doors and we had the pill-shaped island and all that. And when the agent came over, he said, "Oh, beautiful kitchen, just like Darley Street." I said, "Actually, it's not a patch on Darley Street," because, I knew that the detail, like the internals, it was just plain white melamine, nothing flash about it.
yeah,
Uh, but what he said to me is, from the untrained eye, you would not know that it's not the same joiner. So I thought, actually, that's really good thing to know. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I think one of the things about more budget-friendly options, but that can have a high-end kind of finish to them or effect to them. Things like having, you were talking about white melamine internals, changing it to a dark color if you're using a dark
Mm.
color cabinetry it's very
Yeah.
small. It's a small increase in the cost, but it makes a world of difference. You don't have that white seam line behind your dark doors. So yeah,
Yeah, I
if you
would
can see them.
completely agree. Yeah, it's lovely. It does feel very luxe when you open the doors and there's this moody. Of course, you wouldn't do it in a white kitchen, but yeah,
No,
yeah,
no,
yeah. So, okay, so la, la, la. Uh, sorry, I'm referring to my notes.
no, you're fine.
Uh, any thoughts on trends versus timeless elements? What's safe to include and what should we avoid?
I think it really depends. Sorry, every answer starts with it depends.
Yeah,
It's dependent on your plan for the renovation. So trends are fine if you're about to sell, but if you hang on to your home for a while, trends will date the space, which could be a real drawback for the future. You don't want to find in 5 years' time that your kitchen looks dated when you're about to sell your home. So I think also what some people think is a timeless look may not be. So the
can you
perfect
give me an
example,
example of that? Yeah.
the all white kitchen,
Oh,
which
yes.
was huge in the last few years. So the number of times I heard, I just want to do an all white kitchen or just whites and greys because it's timeless. Well, that's what we may have thought at that point, but now it looks like that all white kitchen trend that was, a few years ago. Um, so even though it might have appeared timeless, it's yeah, it's not.
Yeah. Right.
It's
And they've got
interesting
no
too.
personality, have they?
Yeah, no, that's right.
Yeah.
Um, I think some well designed and sort of well put together colorful kitchens are the most timeless because you can't pick the trend in them. So without the trend, it's really hard to know how old they are, assuming they're well maintained.
Yeah. So I've got a very good example. I don't know. It's, I don't know that this ever was a trend, but I don't think it's very appealing either. I looked at a property recently and this woman had bought it was a penthouse. It's a very expensive property. But when she bought it, because I went back and looked at the photos, everything was very neutral. Okay. So you could say it didn't have much personality, but you could have done lots with it, which she did. She painted every wall purple.
Oh,
Okay,
that's
so
got
all the
personality.
walls were purple. And the kitchen, she put in a very good quality kitchen, like a very upmarket kitchen. I reckon it would have been at least 100 grand. And it was all gloss black. Um, and that wasn't the worst bit. I could live with that. The had a big island bench and it was made out of a material called, or the top was made out of a material called lava stone. Have you ever seen that?
I've heard of it, but I don't recall what it is.
So it's cast and it looks like it was purple, of course, and it looks like, when China crazes,
Oh, okay.
it gets that sort of crackly look about it, like it was interesting and it had an integrated sink, but it was all this purple sort of ceramic look. And I thought,
Mhm.
oh my gosh, that woman has probably wiped $2 million off the value of her home
Yeah,
by doing those ridiculous things. So there's no trend. And I had a conversation with David about it because he's an architect and he often works with people that, have big budgets. And he said to me, what he finds is high net worth people tend to have not very good taste and will do really outlandish things, spend a lot of money on things that are really ugly because they can, and they don't need to worry about the return on investment.
yeah, it's quite interesting, isn't it? I guess
Mm.
it's that old adage that money doesn't buy taste, does it?
No, it's surprising. And you often, like some of our students often buy kitchens off builders because they're being stripped out of, expensive homes and buy
Mm.
beautiful sort of, I know Hamptons is not red hot at the moment, but, shaker style kitchen for like pennies
Yeah,
because being stripped out of an expensive home. So no,
yeah,
money doesn't buy taste. Yeah, I do think making color mistakes is a real problem with kitchens. The
yeah.
red splashback, you
Oh,
still
yep,
see them around.
yep.
Yeah.
And
So,
it's so cheap to pull out and replace. But
yeah,
yeah,
which is a good thing. Yeah.
yes,
But
yeah,
yeah, The bench tops, not so much.
No.
But anyhow, yeah,
Yeah.
so that's good.
Oh, the other thing you're asking is what to avoid at the
Yeah,
moment.
yeah.
For me, black tapware, I think that really dates what you're doing now. And also cool color palettes. All the color palettes coming out at the moment from Europe, and even just if you go into the shops at the moment, they're all warm color palettes, warm and earthy. So if you're trying to decorate with a cool color palette that is existing, and you're trying to find styling items or new stone for the kitchen or whatever, everything's warm
Wa-
now, and it makes it quite difficult to match. So
Mhm.
that's why the Taj Mahal stone is so popular now,
Yeah,
because it's that warm tone.
yeah, yeah. It's amazing, isn't it?
Mm,
That's something that I had a bit of a struggle getting to, like making that transition, because
yeah,
I tend to like things to look crisp,
yeah,
and yeah, it's not the way.
it's a much softer look.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, personal tips and tools.
Hmm.
What's your go-to materials and finishes that look high-end but may not necessarily be a high-end price?
I think the first thing I think about is timber laminates, or timber look laminates. So they bring in warmth, particularly if you've already got an existing tiled floor. It can really warm up the space. You just need to make sure you haven't got too many timber colors in furniture nearby.
Yeah,
Yeah, you don't want, dark colored kitchen and light colored furniture, or black furniture with an oak colored kitchen.
yeah,
Um, and like I mentioned before, there's some really gorgeous cost effective pendants around. Um, as long as it's got some sort of wow factor to it, it doesn't need to be expensive. You just
yeah.
got to source the right option.
I,
The
I,
other thing to think about is
yeah.
uh, often stonemasons will have offcuts. So you might be able to find, if you've got a small island, you might have a feature island piece of stone that you've picked up at a fraction of the price of what it might have been, and that ends up being the hero piece in your kitchen.
That is a very good idea. Because so something that I've noticed, one of the renovators in our community is an absolute cracker. Like she does 2 projects a year and she does round about 500,000 profit per project.
Wow.
Her husband's a builder. They are very hands-on, but I always marvel at the fact that she always gets, like top price for a house, but her kitchens are always laminate.
Right.
Even the bench top is laminate.
Yeah, right.
Whereas I think that's quite clever. So you could have a laminate bench top, but do your island in a piece of stone.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's excellent. Good one, Melissa. That's for our flippers. If
Mm.
you're listening. Yeah. So, okay. Any favorite design tools or software you'd recommend for renovators to plan the kitchen?
So I use SketchUp Pro level, because I design everything in 3D, not just
Yeah.
kitchens and bathrooms. So that's what I'm most familiar and recommend to other designers. Um, or even if you're doing a lot of renovations, it could be worth learning how to play with.
It's
Um,
challenging to learn those SketchUp.
there's a lot of free tutorials available.
Okay. Is
Um,
that how you learn
I,
on free tutorials?
no, I learned through college. So
Okay.
yeah, and really jumped in to learn how to do it properly. Um, but there is a free version that's available via the web,
Yeah.
but obviously it doesn't have all the capabilities. And I might be wrong, but I don't think you can download anything that you create either.
Okay.
So
Yeah. I don't think it's too much of a stretch for a renovator that's doing a couple of kitchens a year to
yeah,
pay a subscription. I
yeah,
think it's worth it.
yeah.
Um, yeah. Yeah.
And I mean,
Okay.
there are a bunch of DIY apps like some of the big box retailers that have design capabilities in there. But you're kind of limited to what they sell. So
Yeah.
at the end of the day, it might be a bit of a time waster in the long run.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I'd love to know, to see one of your recent projects, something that you're really proud of,
Mhm.
and what makes it special.
Okay, so there's one that in their very final stages at the moment. It's all installed, but we're putting the last finishing touches in. Um, was working with a beautiful family in sort of rural part of the hills of Sydney, and they've got a heap of kids, some of which are fostered. And so the kitchen is a really central part of their home. And so initially they had quite a dark, pokey 1980s kitchen. The flooring was slate. So the light just sucked into the finishes that were existing. So even though it was quite a big house, it didn't feel big. So the kitchen, that design just did not suit their needs at all. So part of a larger scope, we ended up changing the slate flooring to a light stone look tile. So it's still going to cope with that rural life and the chaos that kids create. We removed a wall, so that let more light through to the space anyway. And we put it in this ginormous island. There's enough space for all the kids to sit around it without getting underfoot. They love cooking, so there's lots of prep space, lots of storage for appliances and pantry items. And we ended up doing a coffee station and bench a few meters away, sort of on the other side of the back door kind of thing. And that meant that someone can go and grab a cuppa without being in the way in the kitchen, or grab breakfast over there without having
It's a brilliant
getting in the
idea,
way.
Melissa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just works an absolute treat for them. So
Yeah.
it was really nice to know that it was transforming not just their home, but their whole lifestyle and how the household functioned. And it's lovely to work with clients who really trust me as their designer. And I guess the other really important thing that made it a good project was I've got a few great joiners. So this one and I work really closely together. And yeah, so it's a really good troubleshooting situation, I suppose, between me and her.
Amazing. Amazing. So, and what finishes did you go for?
So we ended up with a neolith sintered stone on the bench tops, polyurethane cabinetry, and some beautiful brass handles.
So when you say neolith, what do you mean? Oh, you're talking about how it's all looks like one piece of stone?
No, it's a sintered stone, so it's kind of like a super strong version of porcelain.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit, I guess the brand name one that you may have heard of would be Decton.
Yeah.
So neolith is another version of that. It's been around for years.
Okay. It's a brand.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Amazing. And what colors did you say?
Warm whites, and the neolith is kind of it almost looks like neutral colored terrazzo, big chunky pieces of stone in the top.
Oh, that sounds nice.
It's lovely.
And so you're going to send through the photos for us so we can.
I will, yes.
Yeah. So our Mikey, our editor, will slot some into the videos so people can see.
Sounds great.
Okay, so now we're going to go for a quick fire round. Kitchens do's and don'ts. Okay, so I'm just going to fire off the question and you're going to answer. So the first one, open shelving, yay or nay?
I wish you hadn't talked about your kitchen earlier. I'd say absolutely not, because of that sticky kitchen dust. So it sticks to everything, and the idea of having to wipe everything clean.
No. Oh no, I don't have open shelving.
Oh, I thought, no, you said you had no shelving. Sorry, you're right.
I have no overheads. Yeah, no, that's all good. Yeah, I completely agree. But sometimes, oh no, this is meant to be quick fire. I'm going to shut up.
Yeah.
Butler's pantries, worth the space.
Back to my old chestnut of it depends. Depends on the home and the family. Often I'd say no, it's not really worth it. Let's maybe be a bit more creative with the space. I can imagine having a library where you can sit and read with a cuppa or a glass of wine. And
oh yeah, I'm liking that idea.
I mean, let's face it, you've got a room of books and you'd be sitting there on your phone, but don't judge.
White cabinets. Oh, you've answered this. Classic or overdone?
Overdone, and that's kind of boring. Sorry.
Yeah, completely agree. Integrated appliances, splurge or skip?
I'd say only for the high-end kitchens. So they look lovely, but there's a big price consideration, and it really limits the options. And things like if your microwave dies, as they tend to do, it might cost you several $100s more just to get the new face kit to integrate it.
Overhead cabinets, essential or optional?
getting back to my comment from earlier,
Essential.
I'd probably still say essential, especially if you've got small kids, because where else are you going to hide the treats?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lucky I haven't got small kids. Stone versus laminate.
I can't go past stone. I mean, there's definitely a place for laminate, but at the moment, I'm loving the porcelain and sintered stone options, and like even some of the acrylics, like the Corian and similar to Corian. That there's a brand that your joiner can put in. So it means that you don't have that couple of weeks lead time between the kitchen and the stone going in. So that can be a time saver.
Okay. And so what was I going to ask you? Have you seen Havwood's latest product, timber? It's called, what's it called? It looks like terrazzo, but it's timber.
No, I'll have to look that up.
It's amazing, but it's around about $3,000 a sheet, but it's very interesting. So I suggest you go and have a look at it, because I was thinking that could be an option for kitchen as well, certainly for funky clients.
Yeah, suitable for a bench top.
To be honest with you, I didn't check the specs,
Okay.
but I think it would be. Yeah, very interesting.
Worth checking out.
Yeah. So where can our listeners find you and see more of your work?
So my website is positivespacedesign.com.au. I'm on all the usual social platforms. I'd look up via my name or business name. Instagram's got underscores between positive_space_design.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this will get edited out if there's not, but have you got anything you want to promote?
I love a complex kitchen design. So if there are any complex kitchens out there that needs a bit of expert advice, I'm offering a free 3D photorealistic render with any full design projects until June this year. And also, if you're not sure about your kitchen design, just needing a one-off consult, I'm happy to give some design advice and guidance. So just reach out for pricing for that.
Yeah, beautiful. So just for those listening, if you want to contact Melissa, we'll make sure that all the links go into the show notes. And
I've also got a blog article that I've just done recently on my 10 top design tips on the website. So feel free to grab that.
Amazing. Okay, so go off. So is there anything, do you have a closing comment or takeaway message about investing in good kitchen design?
I think my main comment would be don't cut corners. Make sure your kitchen fits the home properly. And I'd really love to use local joiners, support small business, and you'll get a much better result and a great relationship with the person who's actually doing the work.
Well, I totally agree with that. That's small local cabinet makers are worth their weight in gold.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks for being my guest today, Melissa. And for those of you who don't know, as I mentioned earlier, that Melissa was is in our fast track program, and we'll be launching into our world of renovating for profit, which we love. And so if you've not subscribed to the podcast, please make sure you do, so that you're advised of upcoming episodes. And even better, if you could leave a review, we would be very happy and appreciative, because that then spreads the word. So that's this episode done. Thanks, Melissa.
Thank you very much.
This is the She Renovates podcast. To discover how to harness the power of renovating, check out theschoolofrenovating.com.